Alright guys, so this is a valve body rebuild, and first, of course, in order to do the rebuild of the valve body, you're gonna need a kit. So with all the seal rings that goes in a valve body. So that's, you see the Mercedes part number is 126-270-0635, and this applies, and I'm going to repeat this, to a 722.424 transmission, and that goes on a 1995 C280. Same transmission goes on a C36. So let's start. So obviously you see from the time when that aluminum washer collided with the K1 clutch, I have a lot of this aluminum powder. So obviously all this needs to be cleaned up. So we flip this, and obviously I'm going to show you. You see guys, all this aluminum powder that's plugging all the valves. Okay, this gasket needs to be replaced, and that gasket came in a kit. So I'm gonna leave this gasket just to make sure that all the holes are matching. So just gonna inspect that I don't have anything left on that plate. Alright, down here down here I think we have two filters. One is over here and one filter is over here. And I'm gonna take a picture, so later on I don't have any questions where it came from. Alright, so we're gonna pull this filter out, which is completely plugged. So this filter is the same size. Alright. So I don't think there's anything else in here except all the dirt. Okay, on this side we have a little valve over here. Okay, so it has a retaining ring. So I need a small screwdriver and pull this retaining ring out. Okay, so that's the retaining ring. Okay, there's a pin with a spring. And there's a piston on the inside, and I think that's it. Okay, I don't think there's anything else in here. Okay, so this is a main valve body. Okay, there's a little filter. Okay, there's a valve in here. Okay, there's this piece over here. It's like a check valve. Two. Okay, there's kind of a valve in here. Okay, careful, because this thing is falling apart. Okay, I think that's it. Okay, now I see there are two screws, one on this side and one over here, but this screwdriver is too big, so I need a smaller screwdriver. Alright, now if we lift this plate, there are lots of little balls under this plate, so what do we need to do? We take it and we keep it and we flip it like this. Alright, now okay, this goes like so. Alright, so you see there's some kind of a valve with a spring. So this thing came out of here. So if you see, this is where that valve came from. All the balls, they sit under this plate, which I'm not going to remove yet because I want to concentrate on this part. Okay, so that I'm going to put over here. Now let's have a closer look. Okay, there's a little valve over here. That's a lock. This is a lock. This is a little valve. Okay, I don't see anything else here. Okay, so let's start with this part. Okay, so there goes the plate. Yeah, that's a piston with some piston, a spring, and that's some kind of a bunch of stuff like so. Okay, let's move to the next. So there's a little valve over here that has a little lock. So if you see, the lock is on this side, so need to pull the lock out. Same time need to hold that valve from shooting out. Okay, so that's the lock. Now if we just let okay, so it jumped out. Goes like so. Okay, next there's a spring. And inside there's a piston. Okay. Obviously it sits like that. Okay, so plate, there's some bunch of springs under, so I'm gonna let go slowly. like this. There's one spring. So this one has 3 springs. And there's a little pin inside. Okay, then we're gonna take this spring. There's a little pin. Okay, I guess here we need to notice the, even though it's not timed, but the orientation. So let's take a picture of that. Okay, and there's a piston here. And a spring. Okay, there's a piston in here. Alright, so this pin just goes right through. Okay, now I'm gonna hold this. Okay, there's nothing else there. Alright, and here I see there's a spring. So here's the second pin, and I guess there should be a spring that sits inside, like so. Right, next, so down here I see there's another lock. So there's another lock. Okay, and there's a fairly long piston in here. Alright, so on this side, what else we have left? So there's a last plunger over here. So this has a little lock. Now we're gonna remove. And I see there's a long piston. Come on, get out. Okay, this little check valve, which is a ball, can remove it. So if I push it in and I turn this 90, now this thing comes out. So there's a spring and this check valve. So seems like that's it for this side. Alright, now the other side. So here, see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So let's start with this one that has a little lock. So we're gonna pull one. Okay, here you go. Okay, I don't think there's anything inside left. Now let's take this one that has the lock. So that will be the next one. Okay, that's the locking piece. Alright, now I'm gonna pull the spring. And down there must be a piston. Okay, so that was like so. Okay, this one's clear. Alright, now let go of the plate slowly. And let's see, so there was a spring, come on. So there are two springs. See, there's a spring here. This spring, this. Okay, down here there's this piston. Let's hold these two holes. Okay, there's this pin, goes like so. Okay, something fell. Okay, the next from 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth one, there's a little, looks like a shuttle valve. Well, I don't think that's it. Okay, next one has a little lock. So it's a fairly long piston. With a spring at the end. Okay, so that comes like this. Okay, so I got a piston and little this thing, but holy shit, which way should it been? I think it's like that. That seems like everything's clear. Okay, now washing. Okay, let's take this plate off, and I already got a ball that jumped out, so I think that plastic ball was over here. Okay, so I think that this piece is from here, and then need to identify this piece. Okay, I think this was over here. Alright, so when I removed the stuff, I had this little piece jumped out and this one got stuck. So I think this one goes here and that's on top. And by the look of it, there's a little ball on top of the spring. So now I want to remove the oil so I can see stuff, and then I'm gonna take a picture. Disassembly of the upper valve body. So what I've done, I've printed the schematic showing where all the balls are. So two things to notice here, that you see this ball over here. So this ball sits on top of the spring. If you notice, it's here. Now in some manual says sometimes there's 18 balls and sometimes there's 19. So I counted and I have 18 balls, and what I noticed, if you see, there is the ball over here. So in my case, I don't have a ball over here. So I don't know why, or I couldn't find any information on that. But same time, I don't have a check valve on a lower valve body. Also to notice, you see this highlighted in red. This is supposed to be a rubber ball. So I'll try using a magnet and see if this in fact it's true, if it's a rubber ball over here. Well, let's start. I think they all are rubber balls, because my magnet, unless it's stainless steel of course, and my magnet is not picking them up. Alright, so I think what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be pulling the balls, and I'm going to, same time, I'm going to measure them, make sure that they're same size. Okay, 5.5. Okay, now I need to remove the rest of the valves. So there's a spring with the pin. That's one. So there's this pin with a spring. Now there's this valve. So there's a tiny spring with the valve from here. Alright, moving along. So now there's this spring that sits under the ball. So there's a valve over here. Okay, there's a little red plastic piece inside. See if I can take it out. Okay, I need to pay attention to that, how it's installed. So it's installed like this. This bottom part goes down. Okay, there's a little valve over here, so we can push it from the bottom and then grab this arm and pull it up. Okay, so you see it's like that. Now I'm just gonna flip it. Hopefully, actually, I should flip it towards myself and see if anything's gonna come out. Okay, I think that's it. Okay, now this is the upper valve body. So I've tried to reposition the camera so you guys can see better. All right. Okay, so I removed all the screws, and now let's try and release this plate slowly and carefully. Okay, so let's see what we have. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I think this is, I'm not sure, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it looks like we have. So we'll start pulling from this end. So that goes like so. 1, that's 2, and that's 3, okay, there's another, a little piston inside, but we're gonna go to this one. So that's 4. 5 we're gonna skip. We'll figure out. So this is 6. 7 doesn't come yet. Okay, so this is holding, this is not coming, this is holding pretty good. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, there's a little pin from number 3. Okay, number 2 I can see. Unless this is from other side. Alright, number 3, I see there's a little piston with a spring on the end. So we're gonna work it out. Okay, so this is from number 3. Got a little pin with a spring. So 1, 2, 3, and the spring was in the back. So that goes like so. Okay, so number 4, seems there's a little pin inside, not the pin, little okay, a little piston with a spring. Okay, so this is comes out of number 4. Okay, there's a spring in there. Okay, so the spring goes at the end, and this goes like so. Okay, and the plate should be on this end. Okay, I guess number 5 is the long spool that gets removed from other side. So we'll skip it. So number nothing there. Alright, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, number 7 is held in place with a spring pin. So I'm gonna try and push the spring pin out, which is fairly easy. Alright, and I got a spring from somewhere. It must be from here. Okay, what else we have in there? There's another, the spring from here. And there's another valve, not the valve, but something in there that we need to get out. Alright, so this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The 5 is probably removed from other side at this point. Okay. And I've got something coming 1, 2, 3, 4. There's a sleeve on 1, 2, 3, 4. Alright, now we're gonna flip it like so. Alright, so we'll start from the left. Okay, so next, okay, we get out another piston with a spring. I think that's it. Okay, second one. There's another long spring. Okay, second spring. Okay, this is clean. There's nothing else in there. Alright, the third one. Another little piston. So this plate, you see there's 3 screws and there's a set screw. So do not touch that set screw because that's a very important screw. It has to do something with the timing of a kick down and acceleration on an upshift and everything else. So do not touch that screw if you don't want to get in trouble later. And there's a very strong spring on the bottom, so careful with this one. Alright, so 1, 2, 3. So a spring. This is 5. Okay, I don't think there's anything else in there. Same for number 6. It's empty. Okay, number 7 has this little lock in place. So need to push. Slide the lock out and let go. So the lock, there's this plunger, there's a little spring, and there's another little valve. Okay, there's this little piston and the spring behind it, and I think that's all. Okay, so now what we have left is we have left this and the one that I could not remove. I need to find where the lock is. So let's deal Okay, so this one has no lock. You can just reach through and slowly push it out. So there goes that's number 5 from the first tray. Okay, so now let's deal with this one. This one has a lot of springs and a lot of stuff in there. So, okay, we were like this, so we flip like so. So what it looks like, that the last one there's a little lock in here. So just need to remove this lock. And now I assume that this plastic cap should come off. Very gently, I don't want to break it. Okay, so that came out. Did that help? Not really. So something else is holding this. Alright, so to remove the last one, it looks like this plastic cover, just with a small screwdriver, just slide it out. Okay, oh, careful. Alright, so this and it comes out. Okay, there's another spring inside. And there's a long piston too. Alright, so that assembly goes like so. Okay, the spring goes. And then this fits inside. Okay, so I don't see anything else. Alright, so seems that everything's been removed. So this thing is ready for cleaning. Okay, so now that I have everything cleaned up, I can start assembling the low cover. Okay, and the first thing is going to be installing this piston. So for that, need transmission fluid. Okay, I'm going to dip this in transmission fluid, and I'm going to insert it. Okay, then goes the pin with the spring. Okay, now we put this plastic washer. And now I need to put this little retaining ring in the groove. Just basically clicks in. So the pin is in there. Now we flip this, and what we have two little filters. So one filter goes over here, and another filter goes in here. Alright, so that's for the lower cover. Alright, so now we take the separator plate, take our new gasket, we place it on top. Alright, so after we've aligned the gasket, we place the lower cover on the bottom, make sure the filters are in place. Now we flip this plate with the gasket and we position it on top. Like so. Need to make sure that the gasket lines up. Okay. Now we take the plate and let's see which way the plate goes. Goes like so. Okay. I'm gonna just start the screws. So I'm just gonna start the screws and later just reposition the gasket so all the holes align up. Okay, now we can flip it. And now just need to make sure that the gasket is lined up correctly on all holes. Okay, I think everything's lined up. Now I'm just gonna flip it and tighten these bolts. Okay, and so these bolts get tightened to 8 Newton meters. Okay, so the lower valve body, I got this cleaned. I got all my valves cleaned. I replaced all these Teflon rings, which wasn't easy because there's no part numbers for them, so you kind of have to go by the comparison. There are though some color markings. If you see, this is blue, this one's for the green, red and white, so I think I got those right. Alright, and we're gonna start from this side. Okay, that's the wrong side. That's the side that I'm gonna start. Alright. So we'll start with the first one that goes in here. So we're going to take the piston, and there's a little spring that goes inside. Okay, before I put the spring, I want to cover this in transmission fluid. Put the spring in. And I'm gonna slide the piston in. And since there's a spring, I'm just gonna make sure that it's not catching and it's moving freely. Okay. Now we're gonna put this lock, or the cylinder, okay, slide it in, still moving. Now need to put the lock into place. So the lock goes from this side. Slide it in. Make sure it sits. Okay, next one. So the springs go inside. Okay, we'll cover this in transmission fluid. Put the springs inside. And I'm gonna drop this in. Well, first I actually want to check, because it seems really loose. Now there's a little bit of resistance, so I think that's the correct ring. Now let's put the two springs inside. Okay, and now we can put the cover. Okay, I'm just gonna put it in and I'm gonna torque all the bolts later. Alright, next we have this little piston. So first I'm gonna drop the piston in. Okay, so what did I have? You see the little lock fell out. Okay, so I'm gonna slide the piston in. Then the spring. Then the little round piece that acts as a lock. And now I'm gonna find out. So I need to push this thing inside. And now I can slide the lock in place. Alright, that was number 2. Now we're moving. So 1, 2, that was number 3, sorry. Now we're gonna move to number 4. So first we have the piston. Now we have 2 springs that go inside. All right. Next one. So first we drop this little shuttle. I think that's a shuttle valve. And that just slides down. Then we have this piston. And last one, we have a spring. Alright, number 6. So in here okay, we have a little spring. Okay, then we have a piston with this little plastic pin. Okay, we'll wait for the pin and we'll see. Alright, this one's a little bit okay, so that went all the way down and seems to be working. Alright, now we need to drop this pin with the spring. Okay, now this little piston that goes all the way down. Okay. And now, on top of that, we have a little pin. So we're gonna push on that piston and slide the pin in place and make sure that that's locked. Okay, so after that we have another piston and a spring on top of it. Okay, and the last one in this row, we have this long piston. It slides in. And we have a spring on top. Okay, let's see if I have any parts left. No. Alright, and all that, now we can put this plate on top. So we'll take a screw Alright, I couldn't find what the torque on these bolts on this little screws. So I'm just gonna hand tighten them. Alright, so this side is done. Now I can flip. Make sure all the locks are still in place. And we can start installing this side. Alright, so we're gonna start with the first one. That's this piece. So make sure there's a spring inside. So that spring goes like so. Everything gets installed. I'm gonna apply some transmission fluid to this piston. That's one. Then we have this piston. It goes inside. Just make sure that it moves freely. Then we drop the spring. This little lock, not the lock, the little kind of a cylinder that holds the spring. Okay, that needs to be really straight, otherwise it kind of locks. Okay, oops, and we take the lock and slide the lock in place. Done. Okay, now number 3. So there are 3 springs. Alright, next one. We have a piston with a spring. So this spring goes down first. Then we drop the piston. Then we have another piston with a pin, or with a hole that has a pin inside. and all that stuff. So we have a spring. Okay, let's see, why is it not all the way in? Okay, I guess it doesn't go any further. Now that was number 5. We have a little, so there's a spring that would drop in. Then we drop in the piston. Then we have this locking piece. Which needs to go down. Alright, this little piston needs to go down more. Okay. Come on. Okay. There's the little piston wouldn't line up, so that little cap has to go all the way down. Now I'm gonna slide the lock in place. Like so. Okay, then we have a spring. And we have another piston on top. Alright, and the last one. So we have this interesting plastic piece which has a little valve kind of a that fits inside. Alright, so then we have a spring on top, and this little cylinder Okay, I need to push a little bit down. And the last thing, we have the lock. All right. So I'm just gonna double check that I've assembled everything correct, and then I'm gonna put the covers on. Alright, so everything seems to be okay. I was just doubting myself about this valve. For some reason I thought it was vice versa, opposite, but that's the importance of when you're removing the valves, keeping everything in this trays, and as you place them, as you remove the valves, you place them in the tray in the same order. Alright, so that seems to be okay. Now you can start closing. Alright, so this is all tight. Now, if you remember, we removed this little ball, or check valve kind of, and the place for that check valve was right here. You can see it's like a keyhole. So we're gonna insert it back. And as it comes out, you want to give it a twist so it will get locked in place. Okay, so you see, so this thing is locked in place, and this lock keeps falling for some reason. And I don't really like that it's falling. Okay, so next we had this thing. I'm not even sure, that seems like a check valve. And now I need to remember where the thing came from. And I think the only place it came from here. And as I recall, it was sitting like so. Okay, so I'm all empty, which means I don't have any more parts left. Okay, so I got this valve body cleaned. This is called upper valve body. Everything got cleaned, all the little pistons and everything. I've cleaned with a brake clean, and now we can start, or shall I say, now I can start reassembly. Okay, so first we put the piston. Now I'm gonna put this little plastic cover. And need to be lined up, because I recall that removing this cover was a little bit tough. Okay, and now we're gonna put the lock in. Okay, the lock is in. All right, now, so the next one. So first goes this little spring. Then this little piston. Then the other spring. And now we just need to pass to make sure that this piston goes all the way in. Now make sure, I'm just gonna check that the piston is moving up and down, and it is. So now just drop the spring. Okay, lined up. Now this piston goes in. Okay, now this little lock, not the lock, it's basically a little cylinder that goes on top of the piston, and then we put the lock in place. And for that I'm just gonna push this little cylinder down, slide the lock in place, and it's done. Okay. All right, next. So next we have this big long piston with the spring. And we put a spring in. Alright, so number 3, and this is the piston that has this adjusting screw. So we drop down the piston head first, and then the spring following it on top. And then this piece goes on top. Try to line it up with the slots in the housing itself. If you notice. Okay, now I'm gonna take the plate and I'm gonna start at least one screw. Okay, now we have lost another 3 pistons. Okay, next one. That's one. Okay, second one, the spring goes first. So just and the last one in this row. So same, the spring goes first. And then we have this piston. Okay, everything moving nicely. Alright, and now the retaining plate. Okay, that's interesting. So we have okay, so this part is done. Now we can flip to this side. Okay, so second side. And we're gonna start with the furthest valve over here. And that's a fairly long one. Okay, so first we have this little thin piston followed by a spring. I'm gonna try and insert it upside down. Okay, now this piston okay. Now let's see that all that little piston made it all the way in. Yes. So the little piston is in place. Now that's the last part. And all that is held in by this retainer. Okay. Okay, number 4 from the right hand side. It's this little plug. Okay, so I did skip number 2 and 3 because I'm somewhat confused, so I need to go back and see how I took it apart, because I have some kind of a question. I might have mixed up. Alright, so number 1 is this long piston. Right, number 2 is the spring that goes first, and then we have a little piston. Alright, number 3. So we have a spring with a piston that goes first. Then we have this pin that goes inside the spring and inside this long piston. Okay, we just need to center, make sure that this piston goes in. Okay, that works. Now we're gonna install this piston with the pin. Okay. All right, number, so 1, 2, 3, number 4. Okay, first we have this sleeve that goes in. Then we have a spring that we drop down. Then the piston that fits on top of the spring. All right. Okay, and now this little piston. Okay, so that's inside. We got number 5. Now, the question I have is between number 6 and number 7. Something doesn't make sense to me. Alright, so I think I figure out where I made a mistake. I made a mistake placing this little piston in the wrong tray. I placed it with number 6. And that completely threw me off. So number 6, we have the piston, which looks like that, and a spring. So the spring goes first in, and then the piston. Okay, so that makes sense now. Now on number 7 we have the piston. So that's, see, that's the piston, and it has a place where this spring fits. So the piston goes in first. Now I just need to make sure that the piston does go in. Alright, so the piston is all the way down. Okay, now we can place this tube in place. And now it makes sense. So and then we need to install this split spin, this pin. Alright, so now that seems to be everything in place. Okay, now we can put the plate in place. So I'm gonna put one plate Oh, come on. Slide this. Okay, so now that everything is in place, alright, so now before I tighten all the screws, I just want to make sure that I positioned this in the right orientation, and then I'm gonna tighten the screws. So of course I installed this thing wrong. It should be turned around. Okay, now I just need to slide this thing off a bit, turn it to 180. Okay, so this is done now. Okay, on the upper portion of the valve body, or the upper valve body. Okay, what do we have? So we install, there's this check valve. Come on, get out. Okay, that goes inside here. Now there's another check valve, or something like a check valve. It's this rounded pin like that. So that goes with the spring, and it goes in this. Okay. Next to him, over here, there's this metal check valve with the spring. So the spring and the metal goes on top. Okay, and now we have two metal pins. There's this one with the plastic lock. So I think this go in here and the lock slides in. Okay, and now I have the last one, and as I recall, I think this pin goes in here. And the spring shows up like that. Okay, now we have all the bolts to install here. Okay, so main thing, there's one spring. It fits under the ball and it fits in this location. Okay, now the one ball that I removed, and if you remember, that's the drawing I had right here said that's a rubber ball. I don't think this ball is any different from other ones, but I kept it separate. So put it in. So there's one. And we're gonna start looking. 2. I think over here I have 3. There's 4 over here. Alright, I think there's a check ball in this location. Okay, so that's 5. Okay, I don't have a ball over here. So next it's going to be 6. 7, 8. Moving along. 9, 10. We have 11, 12, going to be 13, 14 goes on top of the spring, so we have 15, 16, 17, and need to find the last one, goes 18. So far I think I got all the balls in place. So now I can put my plate on top. Just need to make sure that this ball ends up in the right location, or in the right position. Like so. Alright, so now this part, and I need to figure out, oh come on, don't fall out. Okay, so we put it on top. Now I need to grab it, squeeze it, and flip it like so. Now I can put the two screws. Okay, so now seems like everything's in there. Now we have three little pieces. So we have this filter. I'm trying to remember. So the filter was from here. Okay, this little check valve came from here. And this little check valve with a tiny little spring. Alright, and the last piece that goes in here, and that's apparently that's a drain valve. So with this little black piece. Okay, so I think this is all assembled. It's all in here. Now I'm just gonna Alright, I think this is ready for installation.